Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we're doing something a little different. We're not just looking at a standard piece of history or some dry dataset. No, we are diving deep into a dark, gothic fable. Basically, a philosophical autopsy of a creature born straight out of our own modern anxieties. Picture this, all right? The world doesn't end in some sudden, dramatic explosion of celestial fire. There's no grand, cinematic apocalypse. Instead, it ends in the slow, rhythmic, inescapable ticking of a clockwork heart. We're going to explore a truly terrifying archetype today, one that haunts both ancient folklore and our modern industrial landscape. So let's dive right into it.
I want you to plunge with me right into the soot-stained corridors of the modern age. Deep within the cultural shadows of the Harz Mountains of Germany, a figure steps out from the fog of industrial exhaust. Meet our subject today, Der Bleiche Cyniker, or the Pale Cynic. Now, he's not a monster with fangs and claws. He is a creature of cold iron and subterranean spite. He is literally the ultimate negation of the human spirit. You see, he doesn't want to blow up the world. He just wants to turn its vibrant, messy, beautiful chaos into a silent, perfectly optimized hive.
All right, Section 1, Anatomy of an Archetype, the Philology of Death.
To really get a grip on this entity, we first have to dissect his very name. When you hear the word cynic, you might immediately think of classical Greek kainosmos, those ancient philosophers who just wanted to live in raw harmony with nature. But this German variant, the Bleiche Cyniker, is an incredibly dark corruption of that idea. Philologically speaking, he is the dead dog. The Middle High German root bleich doesn't just mean a lack of color. It specifically refers to the horrifying hue of a fading corpse. The pale cynic doesn't use cynicism to, say, bark at political corruption and inspire positive reform. No way. He turns reason into a weapon of absolute negation. He bites the throat of vitality itself, taking the absolute highest vocabulary of human achievement and just reducing it all to gray ash.
Moving on to Section 2, Subterranean Folklore. The Spirit of the Ashen Forge.
Okay, so where exactly does this guy come from? He didn't just magically appear the day we invented the factory. Tracing his lineage back into the lightless bellies of the earth, we see that the pale cynic is actually an evolution. Back in the ancient era of Harz Mountain fables, you had the Zwerge, the dwarves, and the Alpe, the night fiends. These creatures hoarded gold in the dark and literally stole the breath of the living, driven by this profound, agonizing envy for the sunlit world that they could never inhabit. Fast forward to the 19th century, and this folkloric malice evolves into the ash-faced wanderer. And today? Well, in the modern age, he has fully mechanized his malice. He is the master of the cold black forge, where mythic smiths used to craft legendary swords for heroes. Our cynic now forges iron cages designed to permanently entomb the human spirit. Picture this for a second. Imagine you're attempting to summit the Blocksberg Mountain, which is this classic symbol of spiritual awakening and striving. You are pushing yourself to your absolute limits, sweating, exhausted, trying to reach the peak. Suddenly, right at the crossroads, you meet this ash-faced wanderer. He offers you a drink from his flask. But it isn't water to quench your thirst. It's a paralytic draft. One sip, and boom, your will to ascend just completely vanishes. Your muscles freeze up, your ambition dies, and you are left completely paralyzed on the path. That is the true, insidious power of the pale cynic. Which brings us to Section 3, the Faustian contrast, striving versus stagnation. To really wrap our heads around the horror of this paralysis, we've got to contrast it with its exact opposite. On one side of the spectrum, we have the Faustian archetype. Faust is entirely defined by Streben, this infinite restless striving for life and experience. On the flip side, the pale cynic's core drive is absolute cessation, absolute stillness. Where Faust desperately wants to transcend human limits through alchemical transformation, the cynic's philosophical route is to violently deny and negate all limits. And look at his view of humanity. He doesn't see us as vessels for potential greatness, not at all. He sees humanity as a poorly constructed machine that desperately needs a mechanical correction. He embodies the pure spirit of denial, but with absolutely zero of the wit, charm, or charisma you'd get from a traditional devil like Mephistopheles. And this idea of mechanical correction, it brings us straight into the uncanny valley, evoking the romantic horror of E.T.A. Hoffmann. You see, the pale cynic is the ultimate anti-scholar, acting as this malevolent master clockmaker. To him, your beating, pulsing, unpredictable human heart is nothing but a systemic error. It's just a chaotic, wildly inefficient organ. Like Hoffmann's Sandman, the cynic's ultimate goal is to replace the chaotic warmth of human blood with the perfectly predictable, ice-cold rotation of brass cogs.
Let's look deeper into that. Section 4. The philosophy of ressentiment, midwife of the last man.
So, what actually drives a creature to hate the beating heart so much? Listen closely to the venomous whisper of the leveler from the shadows. He asks, why must you climb? Why must you seek the sun when the mud is so consistent, so equal? It's a genuinely chilling thought, isn't it? This isn't just some polite philosophical disagreement. It is a direct existential threat aimed squarely at your ambition, at your very desire to be more than you are right now. And that brings us to a massively important concept, Gleichmacherei. This is the absolute flattening and leveling of all human exceptionalism. The pale cynic soul is basically a bottomless well of ressentiment, this simmering, deeply hidden malice toward anyone with the strength to actually create their own values. Because he completely lacks the internal light to ever become the Übermensch or the overman, he suffers from a profound existential sickness. He preaches a gospel of equality, but make no mistake, it is absolutely not born out of compassion or justice. It's born solely from a desperate, agonizing urge to drag the exceptional right down into the mud with him.
Through this pure spite, he basically becomes the prophet and the midwife of Nietzsche's last man, the letzter Mensch. The cynic's ultimate goal is to usher in an age of total spiritual stagnation. He whispers in our ears, trying to convince humanity that the heavy, demanding weight of freedom and greatness is just too much to bear. He wants us to willingly, voluntarily exchange that burden for the easy, comforting emptiness of the void. So how does this play out today? Section 5, the industrial hive, a mechanical heart. Where do we see this philosophy manifest today? Honestly, it manifests everywhere. Modern industry is the literal physical manifestation of the cynic's cold heart. He doesn't rule with fire and sword like the old tyrants did. He rules through 3 methodical steps. Step 1, the purge of passion. Things like art, love, and individuality, treated as systemic errors that need to be deleted. Step 2, the flawless engine. He merges high industrialism with pure nihilistic philosophy to redesign our society into a flawless, totally unfeeling machine. And finally, step 3, the citizen cog. In his hive, human beings are processed into identical, comfortable, and totally hollowed out pieces. It's effectively treating humanity like the ultimate tragic corporate restructuring. We just function perfectly within a machine that serves absolutely no purpose other than its own continued endless rotation. And here is the final, completely inescapable terror of the pale cynic, his stability. You see, the archetypal paradox is that he's practically immortal. He's utterly immune to the kind of human despair that destroys ordinary men, simply because he has already completely severed himself from hope. He is a monument of unblinking porcelain and iron. You can't kill him because he is already dead inside. He is that eternal shadow waiting patiently in the dark corners of our libraries and right there on our factory floors. Which leaves us with this final, massive question to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. What happens when mankind finally tires of the heavy burden of its own greatness and practically begs to be made into a machine? The pale cynic is out there ticking away, just waiting for us to answer. I really want you to think about where you see that clockwork heart beating in your own world today. Thank you so much for joining me for this exploration of the Ashen Void. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you next time.